There are some loves that feel like home. The kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket on a cold night. The kind that makes you believe, without any doubt, that this one person, was made just for you. He believed that. With everything in him, he believed that. But life has a way of testing the things we hold most dear. And sometimes, the people we love the most become the very ones who break us. This is not just a love story. This is a story about pain, about mistakes, about losing yourself and losing each other. And at the very center of it, two people who once looked at each other like the whole world existed only between them. If you're new here, welcome to this channel. We tell stories that touch the soul, stories that make you feel, stories that remind you of what love truly costs. Before we go any further, do us one small favor. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and if this story moves you, leave a comment below. We read every single one. Now settle in, because this one is going to stay with you. It started the way all great love stories start, slowly, and then all at once. He was a Korean CEO, sharp-minded and quietly intense, the kind of man who said very little but meant everything he said. He had built his company from nothing, worked through nights when the rest of the world was sleeping, eaten cold meals at his desk more times than he could count. He was disciplined, focused, and deeply private. The kind of man people admired from a distance but never quite got close to. She was Black American, born and raised in Atlanta, with a laugh that filled every room she walked into and a spirit so warm it could soften stone. She had come to South Korea for work, a translator position at an international firm, and she had not planned to fall in love. She had a carry-on suitcase, a 2-year contract, and absolutely no plan to let anyone into her heart. Fate, of course, had other ideas. They met at a company dinner. She was translating for her firm. He was the guest of honor at the table. She made a small joke under her breath about the formality of the room, not realizing he understood English better than most people in that building. He turned to look at her. She felt her face go hot. He smiled, just barely, and said, quietly, that she was right. The room was far too formal. That was it. That was the beginning. They started slowly. Coffee, then long walks through the city, then evenings where neither of them wanted to say goodnight. She taught him things about her world, the food, the music, the way Black women carried entire histories inside their laughter. He showed her the quieter parts of the poetry he read before bed, the way he remembered every small detail she ever mentioned, the way he showed love not in loud declarations, but in steady, patient, unshakable presence. She had never been loved like that. Like she was something someone wanted to keep. He had never laughed that freely in his life. She made him feel like the walls he had spent years building could finally come down. By the time her 2-year contract was ending, the question of leaving had become impossible. He asked her to stay. Not with grand words or down on one knee in front of a crowd. He asked her one evening in his kitchen, while she was eating leftovers she had reheated herself because he had worked late again, and she had waited up without him asking her to. He stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes, and he said, "I do not want to imagine my life without you in it. Please stay." She put down her chopsticks. She stayed. The wedding was small, intimate, exactly what both of them wanted. His family was cautiously warm. Her family flew in from Atlanta loud and joyful and completely unafraid, and within 2 days his mother was learning how to make macaroni and cheese, and her grandmother was asking him to teach her how to make doenjang jjigae. It was beautiful. It was real. It was the beginning of a life they had both stopped believing they deserved. The first 2 years of marriage were the kind of years people talk about when they say they married their best friend. They argued sometimes, yes, small things, adjustments, the friction of two worlds learning to share one space. But they always came back to each other. Always. He would come home, and she would already have his favorite tea waiting. She would have a hard day, and he would cancel meetings without saying a word about it just to be with her. They were not perfect. But they were good. They were so good together. And then she got pregnant. The moment she showed him the test, he cried. She had never seen him cry before. Not in the 2 years they dated, not on their wedding day when she walked toward him, not in any of the hard moments they had walked through together. But standing in their bathroom at 7 in the morning, holding that small stick, he cried. Quietly. The way he did everything. With his whole chest. She laughed and cried at the same time, holding his face in her hands, telling him it was okay. They were going to be okay. They were going to be a family. He nodded, unable to speak, just pulling her close and holding her like she had become the most precious thing on earth. For the first few weeks, everything was tender and new and full of wonder. He read books about pregnancy. He bought her prenatal vitamins before she even thought to ask. He called her from work just to check in, something he had never done before, and she would tease him about it, telling him she was fine. She was growing a human being not made of glass. But then the cravings started. She had always loved food. It was one of the things he loved about her. She ate with joy, cooked with passion, tried everything without hesitation. But pregnancy changed things. The cravings came fast and heavy and at the worst possible hours. She wanted things she had grown up eating back in Atlanta, fried chicken at midnight, sweet potato pie at 2 in the morning, biscuits and gravy before the sun came up. She wanted comfort. She wanted her mother's kitchen. She was thousands of miles from home, in a country that was still not fully hers, carrying a child, and her body was screaming for everything familiar. He tried. That needs to be said clearly, he tried. He learned how to make the things she wanted. He ordered ingredients online. He drove across the city at odd hours looking for specific things she had mentioned. He never complained, at least not in the beginning. But the nights got longer. The requests came more often. And sometimes it was not even really about the food. Sometimes she would shake him awake at 2 in the morning, and he would sit up, already half moving toward the kitchen, his body running on muscle memory and love, while she lay in bed calling out what she wanted. And he would stand at the stove in the dark, exhausted from a 14-hour day, making something warm for her, telling himself this was temporary. This was what you do. This was love in its most practical form. She knew, somewhere deep down, that she was pushing it. But she could not stop. The pregnancy had cracked something open in her, and everything came pouring out: hunger, fear, loneliness, love, grief for a version of herself she could feel disappearing. She was getting bigger. She could see it, feel it, could not avoid it in the mirror. The weight was coming fast, and with it came a shame she had not expected. She had never had a complicated relationship with her body before. But now she was watching herself change in ways she could not control, and it scared her. She started pulling away from her reflection. Started canceling the brunches she used to love with her Korean girlfriends. Started wearing his oversized shirts around the house and going quiet when he tried to compliment her. He would tell her she was beautiful. She would wave it off. He would reach for her hand and she would let him hold it, but her eyes would be somewhere else. He noticed. He always noticed. But he did not know how to name what was happening. He was not a man of many emotional words. He could sit beside her in silence and mean 1,000 things, but he did not always know how to reach through the wall she was building and say, "I see you. I see that you are afraid. I am here." And so the distance grew. Quietly. The way all distance does. And then at 5 months, they lost the baby. There is no soft way to say that. There is no sentence that prepares you for it or explains it away. They lost the baby. She went to the hospital for a routine visit and came out carrying a silence that would stay in the house for months. He drove her home and neither of them spoke. She went straight to bed. He sat in the living room alone for a very long time, hands clasped, staring at the floor, trying to hold himself together because he thought if he fell apart she would have no one. In the weeks that followed, he moved around her with the gentleness of someone walking on ice. He brought her food she did not eat. He ran baths she did not take. He would sit on the edge of the bed and just be there, because he did not know what else to do, and sometimes he would rest his hand near hers without touching her, just close enough for her to reach if she wanted to. She rarely reached. Grief had swallowed her whole. She barely spoke. She stopped cooking, stopped laughing, stopped filling the house with the sounds that had made it feel alive. He would come home to darkness and silence and the particular weight that grief leaves in a room. He would make dinner and leave a plate for her and go to bed wondering if tomorrow would be different. Sometimes she cried at night when she thought he was asleep. He always heard her. He would lie still in the dark listening, not knowing whether going to her would help or hurt, and that not knowing was its own kind of agony. He brought up therapy gently. Once, she shut it down before he finished the sentence. He suggested they go away for a few days, change the air, give themselves a break from the walls that held all the memories of a pregnancy that no longer existed. She did not want to go anywhere. He called her mother, quietly, without telling her, because he was desperate and had no other ideas. Her mother spoke to her on the phone for almost 2 hours. He sat outside the bedroom door and listened to his wife cry in a way that broke something open in him. But he kept trying. For months, he kept trying. The problem was that grief does not always come out as sadness. Sometimes it comes out as anger. Sometimes it comes out sideways, looking for something to land on. And it landed on him. She started accusing him of things. It started small, a look he had given someone at a restaurant, a message that took too long to reply to, a late night at the office that did not quite add up in her mind. He was patient at first. He understood that this was the pain talking, not her. He explained himself calmly. He showed her whatever she asked to see. He did not get defensive because he had nothing to hide and he knew she was not in a normal place. But it kept coming, week after week. The accusations grew sharper and more specific. He was talking to someone. He was losing interest. He had never really loved her the way he claimed to. He was waiting for her to recover so he could leave. He had someone on the side. He would stand in the kitchen or the living room or wherever she had found him, and he would look at her, really look at her, and he would try to find the woman who had made that small joke at the dinner table and changed his entire life. She was still in there somewhere, but she was buried under so much pain that he was struggling to reach her. He stopped defending himself. Not because he had given up, but because no defense was landing anyway. Whatever he said, she had already decided on the answer. And arguing felt like another way of losing her. And then the physical distance became total. It was not something she announced. It just became a wall. She would come to bed and lie facing away from him. He would wake up and she would already be somewhere else in the house. The warmth that had once moved so freely between them had gone cold and still. He was a patient man, an extraordinarily patient man, but he was also human. He was also lonely. He was also grieving, not just the baby, but her, the version of her that had disappeared, the marriage he had believed was unbreakable. Months passed. He stopped reaching for her. He stopped asking. He got up every morning, went to work, came home, ate dinner mostly alone, and went to sleep beside a woman who had locked herself away from him so completely that sharing a bed felt like a formality. He was not angry. Not yet. He was just empty. And empty people make mistakes. The mistake had a name. She was a mutual friend, someone they had both known for years, someone who had always been around the edges of their life as a couple. She was beautiful and she knew it, and she had always looked at him with a kind of quiet attention that he had never given much thought to. He was a married man who loved his wife. There was nothing to notice. But one evening, when his wife had gone to bed early and left him alone in the living room with a glass of water and the specific kind of silence that feels like punishment, this friend came by. She claimed she had been in the area. She brought food. She was warm and light and laughed easily, and for a few hours he felt like a human being again. It should have stayed there. It did not stay there. He is not a villain. That needs to be said. He was a man who had spent the better part of a year being shut out by the person he loved most, who had tried everything and watched it fail, who was running on empty and suddenly felt seen by someone who was right in front of him. None of that makes it right, but it makes it human. It happened once. And the moment it was over, he felt it, the full, crushing weight of what he had done. He sat in his car afterward and could not move for a very long time. He thought about his wife. About the way she had looked at him the first time he told her he loved her, like she was afraid to believe it. About the life they had built together. About the baby they had lost. About the months he had stood outside her pain trying to find a way in. He drove home. She was asleep. He lay beside her in the dark and made a decision. He told her the next morning. He did not dress it up. He did not build to it slowly or look for the softest way to say what he had done. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, where they had eaten 1,000 meals together, and he told her. All of it. He told her what had happened, who it was, and how he felt, the loneliness, the emptiness, the months of reaching for her and finding nothing, and how none of that excused what he had done. He told her he was not saying it to hurt her. He was saying it because he could not look her in the face and carry a secret. He was saying it because she deserved the truth, even when the truth was terrible. And then he said the words that have lived in every person who heard this story since the beginning. He said, "You are not the same woman I married." Not as a weapon. Not to wound her. He said it the way a person says something they have been holding for so long it has become too heavy to carry. He said it with sadness. He said it like a grief of its own. She was very still for a moment. The kitchen was completely quiet. And then she stood up, slowly, and she slapped him across the face. He did not move. He did not say anything. He just let her. She grabbed her bag, her keys, her phone, and she walked out of the door. He heard it close behind her. He heard the elevator. He heard nothing after that. He sat at that table for a long time. He had expected anger. He had expected tears, screaming, things thrown across the room, the whole storm of it. What he had not expected was the way the apartment felt after she left, not just quiet, but evacuated. Like the air itself had followed her out. He called her after about an hour. It rang and rang. He called again. No answer. He sent a message. Nothing came back. By evening, he still had not heard from her. He called her sister in Atlanta. She had not heard from her either, but promised to reach out. He sat by the window for the better part of the night, watching the city below move through its ordinary evening like nothing had happened, like the world had not just tilted on its axis in a small kitchen on the 14th floor. He was angry, yes. He was hurt by the silence, by the not knowing. But underneath all of it was something heavier and more honest. He was afraid that this was it. That he had told the truth and the truth had been the last thing. She had gone back to the apartment she had lived in before they married. A friend still owned it and had never rented it out properly. She let herself in with the spare key she had never given back, dropped her bag on the floor, and sat on the bed in the dark for a very long time. She did not cry. Not at first. She just sat with it. He had been unfaithful. That was real, and she was allowed to be devastated by it. And she was. She felt it in her body, in her chest, in the specific hollow place that opens up when someone you love does the thing you feared the most. But in the silence of that empty apartment, with no one watching, with no pain to perform, and no walls to maintain, something else started moving through her. Something quieter and harder to look at. She thought about the mornings he had stood in the kitchen in the dark making her food when he was exhausted. She thought about the evenings he had sat beside her and not said a word, just stayed. She thought about the way he had cried when she showed him that pregnancy test. She thought about the calls she had not answered. The therapy she had refused. The months she had turned her back to him in bed and told herself it was fine, that he understood, that he would wait. She thought about what she had become in the last year. Not because of the weight or the grief. Those were things that had happened to her, things she could not have controlled. but because of what she had done with the pain, the accusations, the coldness, the way she had made him into a suspect when he had done nothing but love her. The way she had shut down every bridge he tried to build until he stopped building them. She put her face in her hands. She did not excuse what he had done. She was not going to pretend it did not happen or that it did not hurt. But she was sitting in an empty apartment at midnight, and she was honest enough, finally, to ask herself, who had she been to him in the months before it happened? She cried then, deeply. The kind of crying that has been waiting a very long time. Days passed. She did not go back. She went through the stages the way every person does, the anger, the replaying of every moment, the way her mind kept returning to his voice when he said those words. You are not the same woman I married. She turned it over and over in her hands. Some days it felt like cruelty. Some days it felt like the truest thing anyone had ever said to her. She had not been herself. That was the part she kept arriving at. She had been in pain, yes. She had been grieving, yes. But she had also been cruel to a man who had done nothing to deserve it. She had punished him for loving her. She had let the worst version of herself take over and then wondered why everything was falling apart. Her mother called her one afternoon and they talked for a long time. Not about right or wrong, not about what he had done or what she had done, but about what they both wanted. About what a marriage actually was. About what it meant to love someone through the hard seasons and not just the beautiful ones. Her mother said something she did not forget. She said, baby, love does not leave just because things get dark. But it does need both people in the room for it to survive. She thought about that for a long time. She thought about him. About the specific way he made her tea. About how he always remembered the small things she mentioned once and never brought up again. About the way he had looked at her on their wedding day, not like she was beautiful, though he always thought she was, but like she was his. Like he had found the thing he had been looking for, and he intended to hold it carefully. She missed him. Even now, even with all of it sitting between them, she missed him like a physical ache. She picked up her phone. She called him on a Tuesday morning when the city outside her window was just beginning to wake up. He answered on the second ring. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Just the sound of each other breathing. Then she said his name. Just his name. And he said, I know. And that was enough. She came back that afternoon. He opened the door before she knocked, because he had been sitting near it, because he had not stopped hoping she would come back from the moment she left. She stood in the doorway with her bag over her shoulder and her eyes red from days of crying, and she looked like the woman he had married and also like someone who had been through something that had changed her, and he thought that he must look the same to her. She walked in. He closed the door behind her. They stood in the hallway for a moment, not yet touching, just looking at each other with all of it still between them, the grief, the distance, the betrayal, the silence, the months of missing each other while standing in the same room. She spoke first. She said, I was not there for you the way I should have been. I was in pain, but I took it out on you, and I made you feel like you were nothing when you were everything. I am not saying that to excuse what happened. I am saying it because it is true, and I should have said it a long time ago. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, what I did was wrong. No amount of loneliness makes it right. You deserved better than that, and I am going to spend a very long time making sure you know that I know it. She nodded. Her eyes filled. He opened his arms. She walked into them. They held each other in the hallway of the apartment that had been silent for days, and it was not a reconciliation that fixed everything, not some magic moment that erased all the damage. They both knew the work that was ahead. They both knew that this was just the beginning of the beginning. There were things to rebuild and things to forgive and things to face together that they had been avoiding for too long. But they were together. And they were honest. And for the first time in a very long time, neither of them was locked away. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. He wiped her tears with his thumb, the way he always did, and she gave him a watery, almost smile that was the most beautiful thing he had seen in months. He said, I choose you. Still. Every time. She looked at him and said, "Then let's start again. The right way this time." And that is where we leave them. Not at the perfect ending, because there is no such thing. Not at the moment where all the pain disappears and everything goes back to the way it was, because it never goes back to the way it was. It goes forward, differently, carrying everything that happened. But they chose each other. Standing in that hallway, broken and honest and still standing, they chose each other. Because that is what love actually is, when you strip away all the beautiful parts. It is not the easy days or the wedding photos or the moments where everything feels effortless. It is the choice you make on the hard day. The choice to stay. The choice to speak the truth even when it costs you. The choice to look at the person who hurt you and the person who failed you and say, "I still want to find a way through this with you." He was not the same man she had first noticed across a formal dinner table. She was not the same woman who had made that joke and changed his life. They had both been broken and rebuilt in ways that left marks. But they were choosing to be together in this new shape, whatever it was, wherever it led. Some loves do not survive what they went through. And that is true, and it is a kind of grief all its own. But this one did. Not easily. Not without scars. But it did. If this story reached something inside you, if you found yourself holding your breath at certain moments or wishing so hard for them to find their way back to each other, then you already know what kind of love you believe in. Leave a comment below and tell me what part of this story hit you the most. Were you rooting for them the whole time, or did you have a moment where you understood why she walked out that door? We want to hear from you. This channel lives because of the people who watch and feel and share, and if this story is one you want someone else to hear, please share it with them. You never know who needs a story like this today. And if you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? There are more stories coming. Stories that will make you feel things you forgot you could feel. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and we will see you in the next one.